What's up, guys? You are listening to a late May edition of the Splash Egg podcast, and today I'm joined by previous guest. I'm definitely happy to have him on again, and we're going to talk about Ozark, all things Ozark. So I'm just going to say it now. We're going to talk all things Ozark, meaning that there will be spoilers. So if you haven't seen all 3 seasons of Ozark, what are you doing? I highly recommend that you check it out. But let me come on my guest, Nathan. How you doing, man?
I am good, Matt. Thank you for having me. Always love to be here. What's good, Splash Taggers?
Appreciate you taking the time to come on. And every time you come on, you always have a very nice thing to say about my podcast. So I appreciate that.
It's a lot of fun, dude. Thank you for having me.
But yeah, no, I've definitely been looking forward to this one specifically. So right off the bat, I'm just gonna get right to it. Ozark. This is a show that obviously this third season came out late March, and you a couple weeks ago you were able to finish it. I finished it pretty quickly, so just right off the bat, like your one sentence review reaction of season 3, go.
Absolutely bloody, heartbreaking, and satisfying all at the same time.
That well put. I can't disagree with you on any of that. So before we dive more deep into the weeds of season 3, and then I guess bigger picture stuff, I'm curious. Like, as you know, we've talked plenty of times. I know that I knew for a while that you watched Ozark and whatnot, but I'm curious, like, how did you first hear about it? What got you hooked? Kind of just tell me your experience of kind of your viewing, because for a lot of people, I'm sure, like as is the case with many Netflix shows, it's like, oh yeah, I watched one episode and then I was like so hooked, or like, you know, some people say like, oh yeah, it took time. I'm curious for kind of your experience of viewing it.
Yeah, so it's actually an extremely funny experience. My roommate and I, this was, I want to say season 2 premiered in 2018. Is that right? Yep. 2018. Okay. So I think this was either the spring semester of our second year or the fall. It was either the fall of third. No, it definitely couldn't have been the fall of third year because we were mad busy then. So it was definitely spring semester of our second year in college, and we were like browsing through Netflix, and then we see this show called Ozark, right? Yep. And I think like one of my coaches had like suggested like, oh, Nathan, like you're like studying finance and stuff, right? Like you should check the show Ozark, like just in case, you know. So he's just making some jokes, yeah. But eventually like we got around to like watching the trailer, and we were like, dude, this looks pretty hype. So we watched the first episode, and I remember it was on a Friday night. We watched the episode. It was probably around like 10 or 11 p.m. We were thinking like we'll do like 1 or 2 episodes and go to bed. Next thing you know, we were watching until I think it was like something like nasty, like disgusting, like 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. or something like that. We just kept watching, and we binged the entire like 2 seasons, I think, in a matter of like 3 days. So that's like I took in Ozark season 1 and season 2 all together, and I remember when we finished the second season, we were like, I cannot wait for a third season, and then it finally came out.
Yeah. Oh. Okay.
But
so
yeah.
Was this last spring, like 2019? Spring 19?
It's like I don't remember. I think it was like the spring of second year. It had to have been spring of second year.
Okay. Well, not to get too nitpicky, but so season 2 dropped August 2018, which would have been after spring.
So then it must.
So I'm thinking, was it third? Did you watch it in the spring or the fall?
It was probably fall third year then.
Fall third. Dang, that was a busy time, bro.
No, I know. I guess we did that during fall third year.
But hey,
watching on like a Friday night.
But hey, like I'm sure that shit helped you with accounting.
Dude, for sure.
Jokes aside, no, that's dope though, because like to me, I've always wanted to like binge the shit out of a show in like one sitting, but it's like really hard to do. Like
so hard.
So from like 10, because you usually start at like best case 8 p.m. Realistically like 10, 10:30, 11, and it's just like it's hard to grind through like the
Totally.
finale, even no matter how good. So
Yeah.
I'm impressed. I'm impressed. Though I'm impressed.
We literally got so hooked. Like it was crazy.
Yeah, I
The
mean,
show is just so good.
it it for sure is. And I guess talking a little bit more about the show, one thing that I've always been impressed with is how they always manage to like escalate the tension and like the intensity without anything too grandiose.
Yeah. That's for sure.
It's yeah, like
And I think that comes down
before.
to the way
Yep.
the show is like filmed and all like the small little like elements that like you see in the show. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the fact that there's just so many different parties involved, each with a different agenda. It's
Oh
kind
yeah.
of like it's you and I we had a class on negotiations. It's kind of like this massive negotiation that's very feisty and
Yeah.
is incredibly high
Yeah.
stakes.
That's
But
very well put.
but before we talk about the details of the show, I just wanted to just kind of share a little bit. To me, so like I said, Ozark season 1 comes out July 2017. That's like the summer in between our first and second year of
Mm-hmm.
college. Then season 2 comes out August 2018. That's, right before our third year of college. 3 comes out March 2020 during our final semester of actually quarantine because of coronavirus, right? So to me, like Ozark, to me, in some ways, it's kind of the show that I will, if I have to think about what show kind of defined my college experience, I kind of think of that because it was like early college, middle of college, and then the weirdest semester of college,
Oh,
obviously talking about
that's dope. So
this
you
recent one.
watch
Yeah.
it like mad early since it dropped.
So yeah,
Part of that. You
I
part of that.
guess now. So yeah, I watched it in July 2017 when it first dropped. I actually held off on season 2 because, like you said, it was like a pretty busy
Time. Yeah.
semester. Yeah, so I actually didn't watch the second season until July 2019. So like the summer, I was just
Wow.
knocked it out in a week.
Okay,
again.
gotcha.
But the third season I finished in 2 days.
Yeah.
It was a Monday and a Tuesday.
Yeah, you could just do that with this show. And like
Yeah.
now that I think back to it, like I think that's why we compress it. It was probably because like I mean like I don't know, there weren't like that many nights third year fall where like we were quote unquote free, but it was probably on like those lighter nights. I think that was why we started me too, because we were probably grinding on some work, and then we decided to pop some Ozark and then just got hooked.
Yeah.
I say that sounds terrible. It sounds like Ozark some kind of drug, pop the Ozark and get hooked. But
I mean, hey, the show is about that, so maybe it's. But anyhow, moving a little bit more to the actual show. So let's talk some season 3 because that's kind of what's freshest on our minds. So I'm gonna throw a speed round type of questions at you. Do you think that season 3 is the best season of Ozark? And why? Why or why not?
So, I mean, I don't know. I'm always like kind of one of those guys where it's like, to me, what makes a show great is like the characters. I think, a lot of people probably feel the same way, right? You watch a show, you get hooked on the characters, like you care about them, you have this like emotional investment in them. And I think by this point, like we've spent 3 seasons with the Byrde family. And now with the introduction of, obviously you gave the spoiler warning already, but obviously big spoiler warning, Wendy's brother coming in, he's just another part of that family that you don't get to experience in the first 2 seasons. The first 2 seasons, it's like Marty and Wendy and the kids versus the world, right? But then you kind of have Ben come in, who actually plays, I didn't realize how huge of a role he was going to play in the show this season. But he kind of joins in, and like right off the bat, you're like, this guy's like, he's obviously, he's got the bipolar going on. So the show wants you to like see him in a light where, he could pop off at any second. And unfortunately he meets well, I mean, I think we might be getting to this later. You and I have had some theories on this, but he meets a quote unquote unfortunate demise. But apart from that, I thought in season 3, it was really cool to see how the dynamic shifts. And, because in season 1 and 2, obviously there's a lot of situations where Marty backs himself into a corner and he's got to figure out a smart or clever way to get out of it, right? Yep. But in a lot of those situations, like I was saying before, it's kind of like Marty and like his family, he usually has his wife in his corner for the most part, against whether it's like the Navarro cartel, the Snells, whoever the adversary may be. And we kind of see that dynamic like shift towards the end of season 2 into where in season 3 it's literally Wendy versus Marty, you know? So
Yep.
I thought that was a really cool change up.
Yeah. And not to and it looks like, at least the way the season ended, it looks like it's shifting to where Marty and Wendy are kind of back on the same page, but they're literally the only people in each other's corners potentially. Along with the cartel. It seems like the cartel is going to back them.
Navarro's got their back.
Yeah. Yeah, but and we'll talk about this, I'm sure, in a little bit, but it does seem like you said, season to season, the dynamic of kind of who's a ally, everybody's motivations and allegiances shift season to season, and the relationships change. And that's why, to me, that's what makes the show so great, is that literally the show takes big swings. None of the swings seem too crazy, but none of the swings they take are too predictable. You know, it's like it's crazy enough to shock you, but it's not absurd enough to where you're like, hold up, that doesn't seem particularly realistic.
Yeah, for sure. And I think kind of going off that point, I was watching an interview with Jason Bateman, who's obviously directed a handful of episodes on the show, and he was saying a big part of what drives Ozark's style is relatability. Now, obviously, you know, a lot of us aren't able to relate to laundering for a drug cartel, right? But he's saying that there's certain aspects of the show that might seem like crazy or ridiculous, but because the way the show is filmed, because the way the characters work, because the way the dialogue is delivered, it's still somewhat relatable, because the characters at the end of the day are all relatable characters, which, like, I totally agree with you in the sense where, you know, a lot of these changes, they happen, like, you could still kind of understand it and like resonate with like why these characters are choosing to ally themselves with, you know, certain other characters, even though it's still like a huge shock at the same time.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think you cite the fact that he's directed a handful of episodes. I think that you can I think this is a project that he, as the main lead and a part-time director and a producer, I think it's a show that he's very invested in, and you can definitely tell that there's a lot of care and thought that it really shows the amount of kind of thought and care and time that he's put in, along with obviously the showrunners, the script writers, and the other actors. But I think like I said, you can definitely tell that everyone's really giving it their all.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's talk. So, you bring up Jason Bateman. Let's talk about his character a little bit. The main character, the head honcho, and in Marty. And let me ask you: do you feel like Marty has changed a lot from season 1 to 3? And you can agree or disagree with me here. I think relative to a lot of other characters, he's actually fairly static.
I fully agree with you there. And I think in a certain sense, like, that's part of his character, right?
Right.
He's like the steady family man, you know? When like things are going wrong, he's, I think it's even in the way like he delivers his lines. A lot of them are delivered in like a very, like, I don't know how to describe, like, dry / like, it's crazy because like you get a sense of like a lot of emotion in his acting, but it's not like over drawn out or like over dramatic or anything like that, but you still feel the emotion, which is like why I think he does such a great job in the show. He's able to convey a lot of emotion by delivering lines in a very similar way that he does throughout the entire show,
Yeah.
And so I do agree with you. I think like his character, he stays the same, right? He's conservative, but he's still very smart in the decisions that he makes. He's cunning, but he's very low key about it, and
very confident.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, like, he still like really cares about his family, and that's like, in their own ways, Marty and Wendy butt heads on who's doing more for their family, who's doing more to protect their family, and I think that remains the same for him throughout. So I definitely agree with you.
Yeah. And when I say that he's static, I think I mean just relative to a lot of characters around him. Because obviously, you've seen changes in Marty per se, but I just think relative to, I'd say most notably, his direct family members, he's like been kind of low key the same you know, like you said, he's always like very calm and like kind of in a lot of ways like kind of dry in his delivery, but you can
Yeah.
tell that he's obviously like he cares about his family and whatnot, but he's very kind of calm and steady. And
Yeah.
I think the only times, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no. I was just agreeing with you. Like he's super steady. Like a lot of times when like a lot of crazy stuff goes down, like his reaction. Like I think a lot of the really cool scenes to me are like when
Or when
he's
he
like
reacts.
when he reacts exactly.
Yeah,
Like whether it's something
yeah.
on the phone or I know like me and you were joking about this when I was watching the first episode. Like at the end of the first episode of season 3. Now I'm not going to drop an F-bomb on your podcast here, but you know he's obviously seeing what Ruth just did to Frank, who rest in peace, Frank Jr. Well, not him, but like you know his you know what. Um, but like yeah, when he just reacts to that, it's just like a simple reaction, but it's still like you say, kind of like dry, but like you feel like how stressed out he is at the same time, which I think
Yeah.
is so cool.
You know, obviously he gets angry, but I feel like the only times I've seen him yell are when he's yelling at Navarro or he's yelling at Wendy.
Yeah,
I don't feel like he yells. I don't feel like he's yelled at anybody else. Now, granted, he probably has, but like yeah,
not,
like who is he yelled at?
yeah,
I also since you bring up the end of the first episode when he kind of he kind of looks at the camera and he drops the F-bomb because he's like
yeah,
he's listening to Wendy's voicemail on one end and then he sees Ruth throw Frank Jr. off the boat.
yeah,
Another scene that I found very funny. This is a moment he's not yelling, but he's kind of like angry, but it's funny in an ironic way. Is when Sam is super. This is a scene that I found very entertaining and kind of sad, but it's when Sam is freaking out. He's like, "Oh my God, the FBI is onto me," and he's like asking Marty. He's like, "Marty, what do I do?" And then Marty is like trying to help him out, but then he sees Ben on the security camera and
yeah,
Nelson's there too. And this is like after like Helen's ordered the hit, and so he's like cursing a lot. And Sam thinks that that Marty's cursing at him. So he's like freaking out. And he's like,
yeah.
Marty, could you just tell me what to do? And then he walks out as he's walking out because he's just pissed about seeing Ben. He's like, just stick to the goddamn plan, Sam. And then
Yeah.
Sam's like, dang it, Marty, you're cussing at me again.
No, Sam, I think is a geek of a character. I mean, he's just so like, I mean, that guy is so gullible. It's actually
He's a good guy though.
he's a good dude. Yeah, good stand-up guy.
I
But
like him.
it's really funny.
Yeah, I guess speaking of Sam, a quick question I have is is Sam unaware of what they do?
I don't remember.
Like, is Sam not hip?
I'm not sure, to be honest. I don't remember if he ever found out earlier in the show.
Yeah,
So it might be something we have to fact check.
but it is kind of funny. Just he's definitely the nice naive guy to say
Yeah.
the least. And but I guess moving on to Wendy. I'm curious. You and I have talked a little bit off the air. How do you feel about Wendy, just in general?
You know, I think it was really cool to see her, you know, like kind of rise back to the level of power that she thinks or like she knows that she's capable of having. But I'm not gonna lie to you, like when I saw her like butting heads with Marty a lot, and like you know, I think it's because like I'm like a big fan of Marty. Like I mean, I've definitely told you this before. I know you kind of feel the same way. Like a big reason why we like Marty so much is because it seems like he's always there to like outsmart whoever you know he's going up against. He's obviously not the biggest guy. He's not like you know like the guy who can like shoot and kill people like your typical hero is like in these kinds of like shows. But like you know he's just like so clever and he just figures out ways to just get himself out of like impossible situations. And so I was a huge fan of Marty and like to see kind of to kind of see like Wendy like really go against Marty, who has been dealing with the cartel for a very long time, and kind of like has always put his family's best interest in his mind. to kind of see her be like very hyper aggressive in her strategy and like what she thinks can bring safety and like security to their family. It was just like a little bit frustrating to see. And, like Marty really gets backed into a corner there, especially when Helen comes into the picture. Then it's kind of like a 2v1 situation. There was a part in there in the third season, I think like somewhere in the first third, where like I actually thought maybe Marty would get yeeted by either Wendy or Helen or Navarro or something. I think it was a scene where Helen asks Ruth, I don't remember like what episode this was in, but she says like, if Marty wasn't here to take care of business, like, do you think you could run it? And this is when Marty gets captured. He gets taken to Navarro himself. And so I thought like, kind of leading up to that, before that, I thought that, something was going to happen to our beloved Marty. But yeah, no, going back to Wendy. Sorry, I went on a little tangent there. I think like it is cool to see her kind of like, I feel like she got a real rise and fall in the third season. She was like rising up to power. Things were looking good. She was like, handling business, making Navarro all happy. And then obviously the big fall at the end of the season where she has to make the choice of what is she going to do with her brother. And, I think kind of once she was kind of realizing what was going on a little bit more, and also like watching her go through that like emotional pain and suffering of like, deciding what she was going to have to do and ultimately deciding to like kill her brother, like that was just heartbreaking. And by the end of season 3, I was like a huge fan of Wendy again. Then I like really felt bad for her.
Yeah. Okay. God, the problem is we're agreeing a little too much. I was gonna say I literally agree with everything you said. To me, the way I saw it was like I always thought that Laura Linney has played Wendy. The actor has played Wendy incredibly well. But in seasons 1, I kind of was like, you. I was like, yo, she's kind of anti-Marty. She's like cheating on him and all this.
Yeah.
Can't lie, I wasn't really a fan. Season 2, I was like, okay, she's helping out. She's a good mother. She's also very useful, and she's also very persuasive, especially in like the political space. I'm like, okay. And then towards the end of season 2, she's like, no, we're staying. She tells Marty, no, we're not getting out of here. We're staying. And I'm like, yo, I don't know if I like that decision. And then like the first 6 episodes of season 3, like you said, it was really focused on Marty versus Wendy.
Yeah, it's kind of like you kind of see like Wendy's wearing the pants right now.
Yeah. And by the way, which I don't have an issue with, if I felt like she was ahead of Marty with regards to, you know what I mean? Like I don't have an issue with her.
I fully agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
So I just felt like in that, yeah. So I just felt like Marty was a little ahead of the curve, but yeah. I think, kind of like you said, around episode 7, 8, 9, when you really start to see her more as a human as opposed to someone who's just trying to kind of win power over or kind of win brownie points over Navarro.
Right.
You really start, and like you said, the scene where she calls the hit and she can't even watch, and she drives away and she calls Marty and just like can't keep herself together. That was probably one of the better moments. One of the more emotionally resonant moments of the whole show, period.
That was so brutal to watch.
Yeah.
Just because. Sorry, yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead. You go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, it was just so brutal to watch because, like, you already know that, like, with Ben's like mental health condition, like leading up to that, like he got like it's just like gut wrenching because, like, for the sake of the Byrde family, it's obviously so much easier if they keep him in that institution where he can't harm himself, he can't harm other people, and he can't get them into more trouble. But like you see his reaction and how him saying like I don't want to be here, I can't be here, I don't belong here. It just makes you feel so bad for Ben because at the end of the day, like he's got good intentions,
Yeah, absolutely.
Like the reason why he blew up, the reason why he went to their reception, their party, I don't remember what it was for, like their charity. Yeah. Right. But the reason why he went there was like to kind of like, I know it sucks that he was like exposing them, but he was just so upset that they're being liars, they're being like manipulative of people. And like he goes to Helen's house to like tell her daughter the truth. He's got good intentions. It's just, it was like tough to see her have to do that to him, especially when he was in a real time of need. And that made me so sad.
Yeah, one of I guess we're in agreement with regards to Wendy, and it's not a bad time to talk a little bit about Ben, who I thought he's probably the best new character that was introduced this season, first and foremost. And I thought that his acting, the actor was incredible. For him to kind of, let's call it how it is. That's a tough kind of role to take, right? Because you don't want to overdo it. You don't want to overdo it, and you don't want to overdo, the bipolar component. But it's also, I feel like that's not something that's easy to act out if you don't have firsthand experience necessarily.
Right.
And if you also don't want to undersell it, right? Right. Because that's not, it's probably less believable, but also like, you don't want to misrepresent something like that. So I definitely think he did a great job, and he immediately is like, even though he has that opening scene where he freaks out at the kids that he's teaching. Despite that, you kind of like him from the get-go. The moment he shows up in the Ozarks, like he cares about Jonah and Charlotte, and obviously he immediately has his cool connection with Jonah, which we have seen very few people, if anybody, actually reach Jonah like that, with the exception of maybe Charlotte. So you like him right away.
And the old guy, I forgot his name.
Oh, Buddy. Oh,
Buddy.
Yeah, right, Buddy. Of course, but obviously he's not. He passed away.
Yep.
But yeah, now that we're talking about Ben, one of the scenes that I think was actually really good, and it would have been fascinating just kind of see them like prepare for it and shoot the scene, is right after Marty takes Ben on a boat, like a jet ski or whatever, right, on the lake, and he kind of keeps him far away from from Nelson, and then they're kind of just waiting for Wendy to pick him up, and the two of them just have a conversation. That was honestly one of my favorite scenes of the season, because it's Marty talking to his brother-in-law, and they obviously haven't had like they're obviously not like the best of friends, but they obviously like care about each other and are obviously connected through Wendy. And then he just kind of talks. He's like, "Look, man, the thing that gets to me is like when Marty kind of explains. He's like, "Look, man, I made a decision years ago. I regret it, but unfortunately, the ugly truth is that these people, they only care about money." And he kind of explains to Ben, like, "Look, I understand where you're coming from. This shit it's not exactly ethical. It's definitely very manipulative."
Ethical.
And then the fact that they just kind of have that little moment and conversation, and then they also they kind of reminisce about some old times, and he's like, "Hey, remember the night you taught me about TurboTax?" And I don't know, that was a very good scene. And assuming Ben's gone, which we'll talk about in a little bit, that was the last interaction that he and Marty had. And I don't know, just that actor, Tom Pelphrey, did such a good job, and Jason Bateman's always a great. And so I don't know, it was like, I don't know, there was something about that scene that I really like. It was such a simple scene, but I just really liked it.
I agree. And that's the beauty of Ozark, right? They take really simple things and just turn it into like art masterpiece.
Yeah.
That's
100%. Real quick, I want to ask you, agree or disagree? So to me, Charlotte went from super unlikable in season 2 to hella likable in season 3.
Yeah.
Whereas Jonah, it's very ambiguous. I feel like Jonah's about to take an incredibly dark turn, but I also could see them trying to surprise us and having him actually kind of replace Ruth. What do you think?
Oh, wow. That would actually, I'd never even thought about that. And I think that would actually be so cool because he's really into it.
He's good with the funds, dude.
Yeah, he is good with the funds. And he doesn't want a regular summer job. They try to tell him about that. And he says, "No, I'm not having any of that. Like, I want to come work for you guys."
Yeah.
But that's actually, now that you think about it, at the core, like the fact that Jonah wanted to have that drone was a huge reason why they had any kind of leverage with the Navarro cartel.
Dude, he low-key could be him and Ben could be the reason they're alive.
Oh, for sure. Because if they weren't there to capture that on camera, they wouldn't.
The FBI can't get involved with the opposing cartel.
Yeah. Dude, I'm going to go out there and say it. I want to see, I don't know if this is a messed up thing to say, like, I want to see Jonah, like, go off on someone, like, in the name of protecting his family. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
like we've gotten kind of like I think we've gotten like hints at that. Like obviously Jonah like knows how to work a gun. Like he can shoot a gun. He obviously goes to Helen's house. And for a second there, I thought that he might be the one to pull the trigger on her. But like obviously, and like in another scene where he's kind of in like a pissing contest with the one of the guys who works for the KC mob, who gets turned by the FBI. They're trying to see like who can be more of a tough guy or like who can shoot better or like whatever. But like Jonah's like he's pretty good,
Yeah.
So that'd be kind of dope to see him like protect his family. But in terms of like back to your question, I do agree with you in the sense that Charlotte in the early parts of the show was just kind of she came across as like a little bit bratty. But it's kind of understandable. Their family just kind of uprooted everyone with no explanation and moved them out into the Ozarks. So I could see how she could be upset being like a teenager. But yeah, I mean, I will say I'm not sure if I find Jonah like unlikable or anything like that yet. I think he's a very interesting character because like he's not like he's not like that sociable. Like I feel like the rest of the Byrde family, Charlotte, you could see kind of being like sociable. She makes friends easily. Marty and Wendy, I don't know if sociable is like the right word to describe them, but like I think a big reason why they're able to find success at what they do is that they're able to give off the guys that like they are just a regular family. So in a way, like they're pretty good at being like sociable and like making connections. But Jonah doesn't really have that, So
Yeah.
that's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, just to quickly add, Charlotte in season 1, I would say was neither a negative nor like all that positive. Like she kind of was what I expected. Like she's upset about the move.
Right.
She's getting adjusted.
Yeah.
Season 2 with the whole emancipation storyline.
Yeah,
that was when I was like, yo, this is getting unreal. Y'all jammed up with a cartel. Your parents are jammed up with the cartel, and you out here trying to get emancipated and shit. It was like that was what kind of irked me. But then in season 3, she becomes like really. She honestly might have had the biggest swing of anybody with regards to how I felt before versus after. Because like there's that scene where after Ben, they find out that Ben's passed, and she has that conversation with Jonah when she says like, look, I know you're mad, but like you understand that they just can't make all this magically go away, right? And she seems to finally like really understand the bigger picture, and she comes off very mature. And the fact that she's trying to get her brother to kind of see that, that was a moment that I really liked. And on top of that, like she's helping out with the ads and stuff like for the casino. No big deal, but. Yeah, but she's also been good at keeping staying zipped.
Yeah.
But
another really cool contrast that you see is that like the second where Helen's daughter kind of comes to them to see if like what Ben said was true or not, like they're kind of like it's cool because like in season 1 or it was in season 1. I don't remember which episode obviously, but like when they figure out, they're like shocked, right? But then next thing you know, like they're kind of on the other end of the fence now. Like they're just like the ones telling her like, oh, like, all right, like this is what's happening. Like you got to stay calm, blah, 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 blah. So that was a cool thing to see.
Yeah, for sure. And I just think that the fact that she was like trying, like she kind of saw early on that Tommy was pretty sus. So that was also like another moment where I was like, okay, she kind of gets it now. Like I feel like she's kind of grown into she's kind of more of an adult now. And speaking of kind of growing up and stuff, with regards to Jonah, do you think that there's any chance that he might go after Wendy in season 4?
Wow.
Because before you answer, it kind of seemed like obviously he had a lot of angst and anger because of Ben's death, and then when he kind of goes after Helen and he kind of hears the truth from Helen, it kind of seemed like that was what they were setting up, because there was that moment when Wendy came back and then he says like, I hate you, and it was like that was kind of heartbreaking because you never want to see a family divided like that. But Yeah, I'm curious for if you think that Jonah's gonna go take a dark turn and maybe kind of go against his family, or maybe do you think that that might be too obvious and the writers are trying to manipulate us?
I think I think I'm on the fence where like I don't see him turning against his family. Because I think like they've built up Jonah and Charlotte so far where like, you know, Jonah obviously wants to get involved in what his dad's doing. Like he finds that kind of stuff like really interesting ever since like the early seasons. And so I think to have him turn like that would just be kind of like, you know, like it'd be I don't know, it'd be like a brutal hit to the Byrde family because obviously they already lost Ruth. You know, she was like kind of like the pocket helper for like Marty, and she became a beast herself, like learning actually like how to run this stuff. But yeah, I think for them to lose Jonah would be kind of brutal, and that'd be tough. Like you know, to see like a really divided family. I do think that he uses Charlotte kind of like as like a rock, kind of. So I think you know, no matter how bad he feels about what his family had to do, I think Charlotte will be there to kind of help him steer him on the right path. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And last point about Jonah, that actor, he you know, when you watch him in season 1, he's this young dude, hasn't quite hit puberty yet, but in season 3, he really like I feel like with sometimes when you get kid actors and stuff, when they hit puberty and stuff, it's like kind of awkward or maybe really obvious. But I think that they handled it really well. I think he was really good. No, the actor was really good.
So too. Yeah, he was trying to do. He was a little creepy there for a little bit, like trying to do some peeping with that drone. I think that was kind of weird to see a little bit.
But so okay, so I was gonna say I saw the craziest season 4 / Ozark theory about that, and it had Jonah in it. So I guess with that in mind, talking more about kind of future theories and what we see potentially happening. I saw somewhere that they think that someone thinks that Ozark's gonna end with Jonah running the cartel.
Really?
I think that's kind of crazy. I'm not gonna lie. That's like a bit of a stretch, but at this point, like nothing would quite surprise me.
Yeah. What like they're saying like Wendy and Marty are gonna die, and then they're gonna take Navarro.
Or maybe it would be that Wendy and Marty kind of retire, and they're like, "Yo, we got this guy who's actually low key better than Marty to do this," and then this is like kind of like how he said, "Oh, I don't want to have like a regular job." Like maybe this is it. Like this is his first job and it's his only job.
Like this is his calling. His laundry.
Yeah.
That would be wild. I do feel like that's a little bit of a stretch.
That's a bit of a stretch, I would agree.
But that's cool. I mean, I do think it would be really cool, like you said earlier, to see him take on a greater role in the laundering process.
Yeah, and this is kind of touching upon an earlier point you made about Ruth, but anyhow, at the end of season 3, what's implied is that the KC mob, the Langmores, the Snells, and the FBI are now all kind of in this anti-Byrde camp, although the Darlene and KC mob, it's implied that they're a little more on the same page, like more directly allied.
Right.
But I actually think that I think that someone's going to turn on someone, because there's just no way, in my opinion, that everybody's just going to get along. Like, in my opinion, if I were Frank Cosgrove, the head of the KC mob, no way in shit I'm allying with Darlene.
Oh, dude, he just shot off your son's peen, dude. Like,
yeah. And even within the Snells and the Langmores, I wouldn't be surprised if Ruth flipped on Darlene.
Yeah, I want to see that, dude. I really like Ruth. Like, it was really cool to see the Byrdes like kind of take her in.
Yeah.
I felt really bad for her though. Like, I mean, obviously the request that she was making for them to kill Frank was like, I mean, obviously, like, you know, the Byrdes like couldn't do that, right? Yeah. But like, I really felt bad for her because like this whole time they're trying to treat Ruth like, oh, like, you know, you're one of us, like you're like a daughter to us. We took you in, blah blah blah. But Ruth brings up a really good point. Like, you know, when some bad stuff went down with like their own kids, what did they do, right?
Yeah.
but they weren't willing to do the same for Ruth. And so I think from that betrayal on top of what happened to Ben, that was really tough to see from Ruth. But yeah, like I don't know, agree or disagree. I'm asked this to you. Like, how do you feel about Darlene? Because I think she's a nasty woman. I
Oh,
think she's a
100%. We talked about Marty being static. I don't know if she's static, but my opinion of her has never changed. She sucks.
big nasty, bro.
Dude, and granted, this is a credit to the writing and the
Uh-huh.
actor who portrays the character well. I hate Darlene, dude. like like she's just every time she does something, I'm just like, oh my god, like
I mean,
you are the
actually
worst.
doing a really good job.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm just like every time she like breathes and I'm like, yo, you are the worst.
Dude, how about can we just take a second and talk about I don't even know what to call but like Darliot? Is that what we're gonna call him?
Let's
Darliot?
Warleen,
Warleen, dude.
Snagmore. It's a Snagmore affair.
That is nasty, bro. What are you doing, Wyatt? What are you doing, fool? Dude,
Speaking
like,
of
come
yeah,
on.
speaking of Wyatt and Darlene though, I've heard two schools of thought, and I'm curious if how you feel about these two opinions. Everything Darlene does is incredibly calculated and for a manipulative purpose,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Is there do you think it's possible that she wasn't actually like digging Wyatt and it was more so she was trying to convert Ruth to leave the birds? That's the first thing.
Mm.
Uh, and then the second thing, and curious for your take on both. The second thing is I saw someone say that in typical Ozark fashion, the crazy twist of season 4 is that Wyatt's actually going to turn on the Snells and actually help out the birds because he realizes that they didn't kill his uncle, his dad, and that he's going to realize that like Darlene is like batshit crazy.
Wow. I do think that's possible because like I think there's a scene in season 3 where she's talking about, what she had to do to her husband and Wyatt kind of gets like a little freaked out.
Yeah.
But I think at the end of the day, like I think that's a really cool point that you bring up. I think that's definitely possible because at the end of the day, like Wyatt's really smart. Like we can't
Yeah.
forget. I think I don't remember which the seasons kind of blend together now in my head, but in one of the seasons, like he's trying to go to college, right?
Yeah, he gets
He
into
loves-
Mizzou.
yeah, he gets into Mizzou. He's going against all odds to like try to get his education. So he's clearly a really smart guy, and I think in a lot of scenes in Ozark, they like show him reading. He's always reading. I think.
Yeah.
He loves to read. And so he's definitely a really smart guy, and like he'll probably catch on to that. It'd be really cool to kind of see like if he does turn on Darlene, like what he could do with the birds, like that'd be pretty sweet.
Yeah, man. I definitely I actually yeah, no, that's a good point. The fact that he definitely is kind of I actually hadn't picked up on the fact that he's reading a decent amount, but now that I think about it, I definitely can remember scenes where he's got
Yeah,
something. But
I'll show you. I
yeah,
think he's always got a book. Like
yeah,
not like a lot of times.
yeah, no, for sure. And like you said, like he's kind of been the one who's trying to kind of go against the odds and kind of break the stereotype of just his last name. Obviously, Ruth's
Right.
done that to a decent extent, but Wyatt definitely the fact that he's kind of still growing and kind of coming into his own.
Right.
Um, yeah, no, that's a
Like he's doing a little more to forgive Ruth, obviously, for what she did. So it might be him turning a new leaf.
yeah. Um, so okay, so to pivot a little bit, let's go back to Ben and his perceived death.
Yep.
So you and I have talked about how like, okay, was it a fake out? Like, did he actually die, etc. So
I mean, it might lead us to a whole bunch more theories.
I was gonna say that's you're opening up Pandora's box the moment we start talking about this. But what was I gonna say? I was gonna say if Ben is still alive, couldn't that be like a wild card to get Ruth and potentially Wyatt back onto the birds or to the birds?
Yeah, it could be a very good token to draw her back in. I mean, aside from that though, it's like, do you really think like Wendy was like that heartless to like kill her own brother, or like
Wendy was in a tough spot, dude.
what are we? I agree. Like, what are we thinking? Like conspiracy talk time. Like, what are we thinking could have gone down that could lead to Ben being alive? You think it's Marty like orchestrating this, or like, oh, what's going on?
Yeah, all right. So I'm gonna put on my sunglasses and my black fedora and
Sure.
my sleuth jacket on.
Sure.
Spit some conspiracy theories at you. So let's look at it this way. Marty and Wendy and Helen versus Helen. They're in this Cold War to just show Navarro who has real loyalty to the cartel, who's more valuable, as they always say, right? Nelson is the one who does all the hits, but he listens to Helen, but his priority is to listen to Navarro.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Why was a hit ordered on Ben? It wasn't because Navarro needed him gone. It was because Helen was pissed that Ben spilled the beans to Aaron.
Right.
Right? So first and foremost, there's no incentive for Navarro to say, yo, get that dude off the grid, get him out of my face. It was actually just a Helen versus the Byrde's beef. So that's the first thing. So it's not all that crazy. So take that. That's point number one. Point number two, what if at some point or off, obviously unbeknownst to the viewers, Navarro says to Nelson, yo, you know what? Helen's got to go.
Dude,
right?
I'm so glad you brought that up.
If that's the case, then Nelson, from a certain point in time, does not need to actually fully listen to Helen because he knows that he's going to have to get rid of Helen. So if it doesn't align with Navarro's interest, it doesn't really matter. So that's the other point. And then the last point could be a very smart maneuver by Marty, who, as we've established, is always like a couple steps ahead of everybody else. What if Marty Marty told Nelson, like, hey, like, when you get to Ben, can you actually take him to somewhere else and then get rid of someone else, bring me the body, etc., and we can pretend that he's dead so that Helen gets off our back, and we can see whether we can it's essentially in some ways a test for Wendy. Not that Marty's trying to test her necessarily, but it's to Wendy, if she doesn't know that all this is going on, she still made the hit. It is still obviously a very emotional decision she has to make, and the fact that she can put that on her resume to Navarro, so to speak, that's huge for the Byrdes, right?
I agree.
So you factor all that. Those are the things of like the conspiracy of what may have happened behind the scenes. The reason why I think there's some credence to that is because they don't show the body, they don't show his death.
Mm-hmm. The show has never shied away from showing you a death.
Absolutely, especially if it's a character we care about.
Of course.
Right? And then the last thing is Wendy asks him were his ashes heavy. She asked Marty, were his ashes heavy? And then Marty says, nah, they were pretty light actually, which I found was a very interesting thing to intentionally have in the script. And then the other thing is that Marty seems so, and granted, I know that Marty is like the calmest motherfucker around.
He's calm, cool, and collected through the whole thing. Like he did.
Yeah, he was just kind of like, oh, I'm sorry, Ruth. I know that Ben loved you. Yeah. And it's just like, whoa, like, does Marty know something we don't know? Mm-hmm. That was my thought.
I think this leads us to a whole bunch of other theories that me and you have discussed as to like, okay, do we think Agent Maya is working for the cartel itself?
Oh, yes.
Or what do we think actually went down when Marty was taken to Mexico, right? Because this whole time, right, I think Navarro, he's obviously, he runs his drug cartel empire. He's a very smart man. He's very cunning. So I think this whole time, Navarro wants to test both Wendy and Marty, right?
Yes.
Because Marty's obviously proven himself to be very good at what he does. That's like, that's out of the picture. But like his loyalty, is it there? Yes or no? Wendy, on the other hand, began to prove herself in season 3 at the beginning. She's clearly proven that she's capable of doing a lot more for the cartel. She's a very, very smart woman. She's very good at maneuvering herself in a way that puts them at an advantage. So she's very cunning as well, but he also needs to test her loyalty. And I think this kind of goes back to a big question that Navarro was asking Marty when he kept him locked up. He's just constantly asking him, like, what do you want? What do you want? You know? And so maybe those two together came up with some kind of plan, because, he clearly, like, finally gets Marty to admit that he's scared of him and he's scared of his wife, And so there might be some plan around there, like surrounding Wendy, where they need to do something to test her loyalty, just like you said, and that could like bring them into the good graces of Navarro himself, and kind of like ensure that they are safe, they are more valuable than Helen. Because I think another interesting thing that you brought up is, like, not only is he like calm, cool, and collected. We've obviously seen Marty get super emotional before. I think one of the very first times you see him get super emotional, super scared is when he considers killing himself, so that his family can collect on his life insurance. But in a situation like that, with like Wendy having to kill her own brother, I think it was kind of eerie how calm he was. And I don't remember if this is exactly what he's doing, but when he's discussing this whole situation with Helen, they're just like calmly standing there in his kitchen. And she's the one who's kind of like freaking out a little more on edge, but I think he's just sipping coffee and he's just like very calm about the whole thing.
Yeah.
And then one more point, sorry to kind of drag this on here.
No, go for it.
But I think a very interesting line of dialogue. I kind of thought about this when you talked about the line that they intentionally left in there about whether or not the ashes were heavy, from Wendy asking Marty. But I think another line they left in there on purpose was when Helen turns to Nelson, and I think I believe this happens after they find out that Marty gets kidnapped. I'm not exactly sure, but I know she turns to Nelson and says to him, "If they ever ordered that on me, you would tell me, right?"
Yeah. And he doesn't.
And he doesn't tell her. And also, at the end, we don't see. At least I don't recall, but I don't think we see who shoots Helen in the head from point blank. You just see a gun and a hand pop up from off screen, and she just goes bang, and it cuts to Navarro and the Byrdes. I think. Correct. Yes. If I'm wrong.
That is correct. You don't see who the shooter is.
You don't see who it is. So how wild would that be if that came back to bite her in the butt? If he's the one who gets the hit ordered on Helen and he pulls the trigger, which I think that's something that they would do.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think it's implied that Nelson was the shooter, just given the gun and the sleeve that you see. And the fact that he's behind them to start the shot. Like,
yeah.
Initially he's in frame and then he's out of frame and then the gun pops up. But I did catch on to that when she asked him, like, "Oh, you'd be the first to tell me," and he's Does he wait? He says yes, or does he not? He says yes.
I feel like he says yes or of course or something, but that could just be false memory now.
I feel like anybody though in that situation says yes, because like it's awkward as hell if you say like nah.
Yeah, you can't just be like, I wouldn't tell you.
Nah, not gonna be able to do it. But no, that's definitely I definitely found that kind of like ironic, so to speak.
And I think it tied back to like, Marty and Navarro could have come up with a plan just to test Wendy to see if she'd be willing to pull the trigger on her own brother, essentially.
Yeah.
And there's, like you said, I think you brought up a great point by saying there's no real need that Navarro doesn't need Ben to like be killed off. It's just Helen.
Yeah. And you brought up Agent Miller, a new character introduced this season. And you are absolutely speaking my language, because I think you talked about, okay, Marty has a test. Wendy has the kind of quote-unquote test from Navarro. Helen has a test. To me, Marty's test was either a combination of him getting tortured in Mexico, along with, let's assume this conspiracy theory that my Agent Miller actually works for Navarro. If that's the case, then Agent Miller is the test to see whether or not he's going to take the deal, whether or not he's going to fold. So Marty passes his test. Wendy passes her test. Helen didn't really pass her test. She was the moment she saw the Byrdes kind of providing more value to the cartel. She's like, yo, I want control of the casino.
Yeah.
I want these guys dead. So
Yeah.
that was probably why, like, Navarro, if you're Navarro, you're like, yeah, you know what, I can get another lawyer.
Yeah,
But
she's like, he's probably like, you're dangerous, you know?
yeah, but
You're a snake.
but to go back to Agent Miller working for the FBI, or not working for the FBI, being an undercover for the cartel, I think that theory makes a lot of sense. I'm curious for what you kind of lean towards.
I think so too. I think I texted you the minute that popped into my mind because number one, I thought it was so weird how, you know, she's been very nice to Marty. You know,
Yeah.
she's been super nice to Marty. She's given him a lot of chances to get out, a lot of chances to kind of turn on the cartel, and she takes a very, very different approach than I forgot who was Agent Petty's boyfriend. I think Agent Evans.
Agent Evans. Yeah.
She takes a very different approach than Agent Evans does, who comes in very aggressive. Obviously, he's got his personal vendetta because he believes that, you know, his ex-boyfriend was killed by the Byrdes. So
Yeah.
he, you know, understandably very emotional about it. But she's, you know, she takes a very calm approach to Marty. And I thought it was very interesting how no one was they were in like a random crowd, or not random crowd, sorry. They were just in the crowd for the people were there for the concert. It was probably like super loud. He just whispers to her, I think, what's the offer she gives him, like 18 months or something like that? I think, yeah. He's like 18 months, and she's like 18 months, and he just kind of like low key accepts it there, and then all of a sudden he gets kidnapped, you know?
Yeah.
So unless Navarro's bugged, Marty somehow, like, I thought that was very interesting how like that all just happened together.
Absolutely. That seemed, it could be coincidence, but it seems very, the timing seems awfully lined up.
Mm-hmm.
As well as, to kind of add on to that, that's obviously one supporting point. The other 2 points that I think that I've seen are that whenever Marty like is willing to expose, he says, remember, he's like, hey, I want to help you. If you want to catch people, I'm willing to help you. And he gives her evidence for other people like that he's aware are doing, you know, are laundering and stuff. And she doesn't take it at all. And like she plays the whole I want to do this the right way card.
Right.
But low key, like maybe that's just not in her best interest if she's working for Navarro. Why does she want to see other people go down?
Right.
So that's another thing. And then the last is that when Helen is faking, or when Helen is claiming that Marty's willing to take the deal, and then Agent Miller gives him a call, and he's like, what's going on? This is like as he's about to board the plane to Mexico. Yes. Like that just seems like that's like a perfect time to test whether or not like he's going to fold.
Right.
If you're Navarro, right. I don't know. It just seemed like there's a lot to say. There's a lot that keeps that possibility open. I'll say that. Like, there's definitely nothing that like super strongly says like, oh, she's got to be working for Navarro. But at the same time, like the door is still definitely open.
It's definitely there. That's for sure. And on top of that, you know, she gives him like a lot of good advice. You know what I mean? She's like, you know, like she could come down hard on him. And I don't know, like I guess Marty is very good at what he does. Don't get me wrong. But like, you know, I feel like if there's like a forensics accounting team on your butt and you're laundering drug money, like you're probably gonna get caught somewhere. You know what I mean? Yeah. And it just doesn't seem like they really have anything like concrete yet, which I think is very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, hey, Marty's good.
I mean, Marty's good. That's probably
he's good as shit.
He's good as shit.
But yeah, no, those are. I think the Ben is still alive and the Maya is working for Navarro. I think those are the two big theories that I think I definitely see a lot of the cards lined up. I want to pivot. I'm curious, what's something that you and I haven't actually discussed on the record, off the record, that you could foresee come in a future season?
Wow. Ooh. I gotta think about that one. I feel like whenever I come up with something that I think about, like I just text you. I'm like, dude, bro, like what if this? What if that's that? Did you have anything?
I guess I'll start, and I've told you this, but I really think that Frank Jr. There's no way he's helping out Darlene, and I think he's gonna be either a mole for the Birds or he's gonna convince his dad, like, yo, get out of this. Do not help this woman out.
Mm. Dude, she pulled a 21 Jump Street on him.
Oh god, dude,
She
that
tried to
scene
be a
was
dick, bro.
that was a tough scene to watch
It was brutal.
because
Dude,
you know.
I'm not gonna lie. I had to kind of like, I was tapping my like arrow key because like I couldn't watch that thing all the way through.
Oh,
Like when she put it point blank and she was like, "Uh-oh, I can't find it." Like I was like hitting that area. I was like, I can't watch this.
dude, that all I gotta say is what sucks is from the moment that scene starts, you know how it's gonna end because it's Darlene. Like the moment she loads up the gun and points it in that area, you know how it's gonna end just because of who she is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really think they wouldn't get so the actor that plays him, Joseph Sikora, is like a big TV actor. He's one of the leads on this really popular show called Power that has 50 Cent on it. So, anyways, they wouldn't get an actor like him to just pop up and be like a side Joe Schmo character who's only there to cause trouble every now and then. Like I feel like he's got a bigger role coming for him in seasons 4 and 5. So that's why I think that he's going to play a major role. And that's what leads me to believe, like, hey, he's probably going to maybe tip the balance a little bit. He's either going to tell his dad, yo, you cannot partner with this woman. She is crazy. She cost me something I can't get back.
Mm-hmm.
Or that he's actually going to help Marty out and be like, yo, they're actually doing this, but, like, this is how you can kind of unravel them.
Yeah. No, I mean that definitely like I think that holds like a lot of validity because like I mean we know that this guy is like very petty. You know what I mean? Like he like, when Ben puts like the bird seed onto his car and he gets a ton of like bird crap on his car, like he's waving the bill in front of Ruth's face. So he's clearly like he's clearly one who's out for revenge and like wants to make someone pay. I mean in Ruth's case literally, and in this case like it's going to be figuratively. So I think that holds like a lot of validity.
Yeah, and also like if Darlene and Ruth are lined up, you really think Frank Jr. is trying to help out Ruth and Darlene, like literally the two people he has so much vendetta against? Frank Jr. and Marty have no beef. If you think about it, like in all their scenes together, I never saw any real tension. Like they don't seem to have any direct issues with each other. Obviously, they don't have a lot of scenes together, but I don't know. It just seems like the door is open for a Frank Jr. helping the Birds type move.
Yeah, I agree. That'd be pretty cool to see.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind it. I like that actor.
Yeah, he's pretty funny.
But yeah, I'm curious. Anything come to mind for you?
I don't have anything that comes to mind personally. Just because, like, I literally, me, I text
I feel like
you,
we fleshed out a lot. Yeah, we fleshed out a lot.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. Let me. Was there any? I feel like I have at least texted you some crazy shit.
Let me see.
Okay. I did see one theory that. This is not a theory. This is more of a plot point or a storyline that I think is going to become more key as the show wraps up. Because it took a little bit of a backseat. It had like a quick moment in this season, and then it took a backseat.
Mm-hmm.
Yo, the Birds got to get Zeke back because.
Oh, true.
Not just because of the obvious reasons of like Darlene's crazy, but they've taught. Obviously in season 1 they showed the flashback episode where Wendy has a miscarriage from the car, partially because of the car accident, and then after she thinks that she's responsible for Ben's death, she's like so sad and she just lays in bed and she's talking to Marty and talks about what would have happened if we had that kid. And I just feel like Zeke is symbolic for like kind of the second chance for obviously that first misfortune.
Yeah, for sure.
So they got to get Zeke out of Darlene's hands, bro.
They do. Dude, Zeke deserves better than Darlene.
Yeah, man.
Little baby Zeke, bro. Ezekiel.
Yeah, man. It's funny. This is not anybody that's listening to this is gonna be like, the fuck are these guys talking about? But you and I both know a Zeke that was in our class. Um, I don't
Fact.
know. I don't know why. The moment that he called him, or the moment, like every time in the show when they were like, when Wendy's like, we have to get that baby back. We have to get Zeke out of Darlene. I always just imagine, I imagine Zeke from our class. But anyhow,
if you're
that's
listening, bro,
yeah,
that's
Zeke.
thinking about you, bro.
Yeah, we think about you. That's besides the point. But I think that's a storyline that'll come into play a little bit more, especially as the show kind of wraps up. Because I anticipate that they'll probably wrap it up in season 5. I feel like
Yeah.
2 more seasons and they done.
Mm-hmm.
I did see one theory that people think that Charlotte's gonna replace Ruth. Like Charlotte's gonna start running the casino, which would be kind of nuts, considering
Wow.
she hasn't. Considering that we have no idea whether or not she has the same kind of inclination for the books as like a Jonah or a Ruth. But
Right.
oh
That's interesting.
oh yeah, one conspiracy theory that goes back to Ben's death that I actually don't think I told you, or I might have. At this point I don't remember.
Yep.
The reason I don't feel as strongly about this, just FYI. So I don't know if I even buy this, but some people think that maybe the Kansas City mob abducted Ben, and they're holding him hostage
Wow.
because Marty cut ties with the KC mob right before all this transpired.
Right. That would be wild.
But at the same time, how would they know where Ben's at unless
Right.
they somehow were able to track Wendy?
Also, I just saw this again. People were saying that there's a theory that Jonah shot Helen's daughter.
Yes. Yes.
What is that all about? Because I'm looking at the Reddit here. They're saying that when he shoots out the window, he's actually shooting Helen's daughter.
But the window breaks. But at the same time, in the past, I guess the windows have broken. Even like remember in the first season when Buddy shoots Garcia,
Yes.
and the window breaks.
Yeah.
In some ways, okay, how does that work? Oh, I guess the bullet goes through the person and keeps going.
I guess so. Yeah.
I guess so. Okay, but I mean that would be kind of twisted considering that. I don't know. Like I don't feel like there's that much bad blood between.
Yeah, I didn't think so either.
I wonder why. I wonder why that might be though. Like, why? What incentive does he have to shoot her other than like he's pissed?
Maybe
And,
he's
like,
angry. I don't know. And then maybe I don't know if they're gonna pursue the Jonah being, because they've hinted at Jonah being bipolar. Wendy said it in an earlier season. Like maybe he might be like my brother.
Yeah.
So maybe he pulls an act of rage. I'm not sure, to be honest. That would be wild though.
Yeah, I guess the incentive would be like he's thinking, Helen took someone from me. I'm gonna take someone from her.
Yeah.
That would be the most reasonable.
That could be true.
Yeah. Hold up. This is not really a theory, but I'm seeing also, thanks to Reddit, essentially justifying why Marty gave Zeke to Darlene. It says Redditor Mr. Bushido posted, I think Marty is afraid of having Zeke in their house because he reminds him about killing the pastor. So he took the easiest solution and gave him to that nut job.
Oh, true.
Yeah?
That could be true.
I mean, I wouldn't blame him, low-key.
That honestly, yeah, that's wild.
Yeah. But anyhow, this is
I'm browsing through some theories on my own. I actually just saw something crazy.
okay. Let's hear it.
Okay. So you know how me and you were thinking about like whose body was being cremated? Like we don't actually see whose body is being cremated.
Yeah.
Who was someone that Nelson killed right before Ben, supposedly?
Sue?
Sue. So they were saying,
Is that no Sue's body?
some people
No.
say that they believe the person being cremated could be Sue, not Ben. And why, do you ask? This is from Redditor Maurix. I don't know how to say that. Sorry.
Yeah.
But they were saying, why could this be Sue's body? Because the show goes out of its way to show you Sue's body is wrapped up when they didn't have to. We knew she was dead. We didn't see Ben being killed. And so...
Wait, they show Sue wrapped up?
They do. I do remember them showing Sue wrapped up as Nelson is going through her belongings.
Oh.
So they're saying that it could be Sue's body. And there's So this person says there's a theory. My theory for season 4. Here we go. Spoilers for season 3 below. My theory for season 4. Ruth is mad that the Byrdes didn't take care of Frank Jr. when she is supposed to be untouchable, so she quits. When she went to tell Helen she was quitting, Helen asked if she would come back if the Byrdes were out of the picture. We all know what this means. Ruth knows what this means. She pauses for a second, she thinks, and realizes what it means and continues acting, saying, I ain't hard to find. So, I do believe that even though she's pissed, she still loves Marty and she still sees him as part of their family. She knows that. When Ben allegedly dies, everyone's torn. Everyone except for Marty. He's the only one with a very noticeably cool head, which is suspicious, just as we were talking about. And so, their theory is that as soon as Ruth knew Helen was going to kill the Byrdes, she thinks that she told Marty. And and the Redditor says, I'm sure Marty and Ruth are working on a plan, and the whole Ruth working for Darlene is just part of the same plan. And then they go into talking about how the body could be Sue's. And then another piece of evidence to back this up is that we knew that Sue was dead. We didn't see Ben being killed. Ruth was just as cold as Marty when the body was being cremated. There was no emotion, no sadness at the moment. Also, when Wendy asked Marty if this is the Ashes comment that you were talking about. So that's crazy. It could be that Ruth and Marty are working on the same plan and that Ben might not be dead.
So, okay. No, that's the conversation with Helen is definitely a potential breadcrumb. The one thing that I will say is a couple things, and this is making me think about my own prediction. If Marty knows the whole time that it ain't actually Ben, is the Ashes comment trying to get Wendy to maybe think the same? Like, I'm confused why he would say, like, nah, they were actually pretty late. Do you think it's that?
It could be. I mean, I think there's one thing that's clear about the show is that, like, I think every line of dialogue is very, like, there's intent behind all the dialogue. Yeah. And so, I mean, that could very well be a way of him trying to tell her that, like, look, what you think is happening isn't really happening.
Yeah, that's true. And then the second thing is, trust me, I want Ruth to be on the Byrde side. But the one objection I do have to the idea that maybe Marty and Ruth are on some plan that nobody else is hip to, the objection I do have to that is that it seemed like Ruth was pretty heated at Wendy.
That's very true.
In the office.
Over the bitch wolf.
But yeah, it seemed like they were pretty heated in that moment. But that said, I do agree with his Redditor's belief that, like, Ruth deep down probably still, like, cares about Marty.
Of course, yeah.
I will say, though, I was rewatching snippets of season 1, and there's a moment in season 1 where Ruth is talking to her uncle Russ. And she says, she's like, they're like shitting on her. And they're like, what are you doing? What's your plan? And she says, I'm gonna learn how to clean the books from Marty Byrde. I'm gonna get him to trust me. Then I'm gonna kill him. Then I'm gonna take the money and clean it myself and run. And what would be crazy as hell is if that, like, not casual, but that conversation from season 1 is how the show plays out. Because
if that's what's actually been driving her this whole entire time.
Yeah, because, like, that was what drove her originally, and then she and Marty kind of, became. Marty kind of took her in, and she realized Marty was kind of good for her in some ways. Right. But what if the show low-key just ends with, like, Ruth is like, nah, like, screw these guys, kills Marty, frames him in some way, like, basically to where she doesn't get she's not a suspect, and then just takes off. Like, I don't want that to happen. I think that would be a somewhat disappointing end. But the fact that, like you said, a lot of these conversations are intentional.
Yeah.
What they show. So the fact that they show that in season 1, hey, maybe that's nothing. Maybe that's just a chance to show Ruth's growth. But maybe that was foreshadowing. Who knows?
Yeah. That would be absolutely wild, I think.
Yeah, but
that's really sad to see because have you watched Game of Thrones?
I know how it ends.
Okay, so you know how it ends. I guess this is a spoiler warning for anyone listening to the podcast who like hasn't seen Game of Thrones. So I'll try to keep this like kind of vague, but there is a character in Game of Thrones who makes a huge like shift, and becomes like kind of like a hero in a lot of people's eyes. But then in the last season, just kind of like goes back to his old ways, you know. So that disappointed a lot of people. So I think if Ruth does go in that track where like she's just been, you know, doing this just to like get a quick, I mean, obviously it's not a quick buck because she's learned these skills, but like if she like goes back and betrays Marty, that might kind of ruin like her character development a little bit.
Yeah, I could definitely see that upsetting fans.
Yeah.
But I will say this, and this is true not just for Ozark. This is true for like anything that you kind of build up to and is well done with, you know, a fan base. And I'm talking like Infinity War, Endgame, Marvel movies, everything. Game of Thrones, to name a few. Let's call it how it is. There's always way more fan theories that sound really cool than actually play out.
Yeah,
but
that's fact.
That said, like I said, there's definitely evidence that we have laid out to where some of these, they're not crazy to think that they could happen. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So, but that said, you know, there's always way more theories than there are actual things. And what's great about, I think what's good about like the best movies, the best shows, is that they still surprise you. Even when there's a million fan theories out there, they manage to still surprise you with something that nobody had thought of, you know?
Exactly. It's almost like they're scounging through like the internet looking for these theories, and they do something that like doesn't actually meet someone's theory.
What are the odds Jason Bateman's scrolling through /r/Ozark right now, and it's like, okay.
What are the odds of listening to the podcast right now?
Yo, Jason Bateman, if you listening, I'm a huge fan, but you the bet, you the goat to this show. No, Jason Bateman, I'm just kidding. But if I guess that prompts me to ask you one question. Yeah. We've listed out a bunch of theories. If Jason Bateman's listening to this podcast right now, and you could pick one theory for him to implement into season 4, which theory are you going with? And and only one.
That's easy.
It's easy, right? It's gotta be. Gotta be Ben, right?
Yeah, save Ben.
Dude. Yeah, no, 100%. And then save Ben, and then have him be like, saving Ben will be what turns, say, Ruth and maybe potentially Wyatt back to the Byrdes.
I agree. Dude, Ben was also such a great character.
I love Ben. Ben is a great character. Obviously, he messed up, but you understand where he's coming from. And I would like to think that if he's actually been saved, that he realizes, like, yo, I cannot mess around. And the fact that Helen is dead definitely fixes a lot of the problems.
Oh, for sure. I really hope he survives. Put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's the only major character, quote unquote, death where we didn't see the body, we didn't see the face, right?
I mean, like, think about it, right? Like, if they're going out of their way to show you Sue's body, Sue, who's just a funny side character who pops up to the Byrde household with a freaking McLaren from the hush money that she got from both of them. Like, if they're showing you her body, like, why can't they show you Ben's body, who, like, we've grown attached to throughout this whole season?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Like, didn't they showed Buddy's body, right? In season 2, I'm pretty sure they did.
I think they did. And it's like, you know, it's not new. Like we've seen, like, as the viewers, we've seen like what that the cremation like business that they own. Like we've seen how that goes down. So it's not like they've never shown us that kind of stuff before.
Yeah. And like I said, the fact that they don't show his actual death is definitely, a little fishy.
Yeah.
But anyhow, we've been talking like almost 80 minutes. I know I don't want to keep you up too much longer, so I think that's a good place to wrap it up. Unless you got any last thoughts.
No. I think we covered a lot of cool stuff. As always, Matt, thank you so much for inviting me. I love doing these podcasts with you. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, man. I just wanted to say thank you for coming on, and we'll definitely talk. Chat. I'm having so many Ozark withdrawals to where I'm just shooting you shit every day. But once again, I appreciate you coming on, and I'm sure I'm more than happy to have you on sometime soon. But once again, thank you for coming on, and to the listeners, thank you for listening. And if you haven't done so already, please subscribe on whatever medium you're listening to, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, or YouTube. And once again, thank you for listening, and we'll catch you soon.